exciting. Incredible.
Hello my friends, I'm Kyle Thompson. This is Research Flat Earth. And as always, welcome back.
The Earth. Is it really just a big ball floating in space? Spinning on its axis at 1,000 miles per hour? Hurtling around the sun at 67,000 miles per hour? Whizzing through the Milky Way at a milk-curdling speed of over 500,000 miles per hour? And warp driving through the heaven at over 500 million miles per hour? And what about the sun? Is it really 93 million miles away and close to 1 million miles in diameter, with a circumference of nearly 3 million miles? And it's constantly illuminating half of our entire Earth's surface with the rotation of the Earth, creating our 24-hour days, our night and days? Or, shh, the Earth is flat. And maybe it's completely still, just like we experience. And maybe the sun isn't big, but is very small and very close, and not illuminating the Earth from 93 million miles, but is illuminating locally. And maybe everything, the sun, moon, and stars, are not far away, but are circling overhead relatively close. In this video, we're going to explore the latter option, and at the end, we're going to reveal startling evidence through the use of time-lapse photography that the sun cannot possibly be 93 million miles away, but is in fact very close, and is illuminating locally as it traverses our flat Earth. Oh man, and watch how this sun comes at you. Boom! I mean, come on. And that's all perspective. If you look at jet trails, Google Images, you'll see them, they start out low at the horizon, they come up overhead. Look at that thing. They come up overhead and then they go down to the horizon. Perfectly explains what the sun would do. Here it is going overhead. I love time lapse. And look at this. You can't go out and look at the sun. You can't see this stuff, except that it's on, time lapse like this. It's incredible. Now watch this thing. It's sweeping. The sun over flat Earth is doing a big circle, right? Look at this thing. See it sweeping to the right. It's like a lefty bowler. Just toss that down the alley, and there it goes, hooking into the pocket. See how the clouds angle down to the horizon. I shot it there. That's exactly how the sun would do on flat Earth. Okay, back to the Copernican principle, and this is what they tell us. The sun is 93 million miles away. Now, I'm going to show you evidence through sunsets that shows the sun light following the sun over the horizon, and it shrinks as it goes over. Now there's no way it would do that if the sun is 93 million miles away. Okay, first I'm going to show you some footage from the ISS. Okay, now watch this animation. Watch this sunset. Now this is exactly, if they came to me and said do an animation, this is how I would do it. If the sun were 93 million miles away. Just like that. Have the whole horizon fade evenly. But that's not what we see. Okay, wow, look at that. Look how the light lifts off the ground like a big wedge, or like lifting up a sheet of paper. That's incredible footage. Definitely the light's following the sun, right? Okay, next I'm going to show you how a sun that is circling over the Earth, that creates the horizontal aspect of the sun. If you combine that with perspective, which creates the up and down of the sun, the rising and the setting, you get the 23.5 degree tilt that they talk about. It's nothing but perspective and a circling sun. Here's another sun sweeping out a big circle. Okay, here's a phenomenon that you might be wondering, how in the heck do you explain this on a flat Earth? Well, this footage is taken from Alaska during the summer, and the sun does look like it's going up and down. The reason it's doing that is that this town in Alaska is not in the center of the sun's circular circuit. In other words, the sun is making a big circle, and the town is not in the center of that circle. So the sun will be closer and further from the viewer with the camera. That will cause it to go higher and lower, and also maybe even bigger and smaller. Look at the high altitude airplane. Remember, this is from a high altitude balloon, so that airplane is probably at cruising altitude. Notice how it looks like it's going up from the horizon. That's exactly how the sun will rise, because that plane is staying parallel to the ground. And now watch, it'll go down to the other horizon. All right, again, perspective, that's how the sun will set. And forget the big ball, that's just due to a GoPro camera. But see how the sun, that's the point of this. And then also, look at the size of the sun, man. Look at that thing. I mean, there's something to it to say that we're higher up our view and the sun looks bigger, and it looks like it's not as high in the sky as it does when we're on the ground. Something to that. Let's explore this notion a bit further, that the sun looks bigger when filmed from higher up. The next 3 slides, I'm going to do a comparison, a side by side. The one on the left, the camera's above the clouds. The camera on the right is ground level. And the point for the side by side comparison from the ground level and the level above the clouds is that above the clouds we're only maybe a mile or so up, and if the sun appears to be closer to the camera, well, that means it's probably much closer, because if the sun were 93 million miles away, a mile closer wouldn't make any difference at all to its visual appearance. Okay, here's a little illustrator or a little cartoon from a website called timeanddate.com. It's really funny that they would have a perfect illustration of a sun rising and setting on a flat earth due to perspective. You'll notice that it rises from below the horizon and sets below the horizon. Now you might be saying, well, how's that possible? I can see now you're saying that it rises and lowers due to perspective, but how does it disappear below the horizon? Well, I got a theory about that. Because of the fact that all parallel lines and planes converge at your eye level horizon, this is according to the perspective, I'm not making this up. If in fact, and they do, they converge at your eye level horizon visually, then it makes sense that after that point, they diverge, meaning they then separate. So the sun would continue on a downward track. As you can see from my illustration here, the lines would go to your horizon, and then afterwards they would spread out and separate, kind of like a starburst, and the starburst being at your horizon, at your focal point. Anyway, without further ado, we're going to start talking about, and I'm going to start showing you the time lapse of the sunsets that I'm talking about that clearly show the sun is close and illuminating locally. Here we go. All right, and here are a couple of time-lapse sunsets, and just like the sunrises at the beginning of this video where you could see the sun coming at you, not maintaining any 93 million mile distance, here you can also see the sun moving away, and it's clearly not due to the rotation of the Earth and a sun that's maintaining 93 million miles away, but the sun is moving over the Earth and moving away from you. Okay, these next three slides, the sun is almost set already behind the horizon, but watch as the sunlight shrinks and follows the sun. It's definitely a locally illuminating sun, not far away, not very big, and definitely not 93 million miles away. Okay, remember this video from the beginning of the video? I showed you this one and how it's circling over the Earth, and watch it sweep to the right like a bowler bowling it in there for a strike. Okay, now I want you to pay attention to the way the light follows the sun. The sunlight's going to shrink, right, as it follows the locally illuminating sun. Now watch this. See it shrinking, following the sun? You do not get that if the sun is 93 million miles away. The entire horizon should fade evenly, just like this supposed shot taken from space of the Earth. You can clearly see the way they depict it. They depict the demarcation between day and night, or light and dark, as a long straight line. And you can see the long straight line moving as one solid piece. That means that the sunset should all fade, the entire horizon should fade evenly. But that's not what we observe, as we will see and as we've seen in the footage so far. The sunlight shrinks and follows the sun over the horizon. So these time-lapse sunsets are definitely the nail in the coffin for heliocentrism. But this particular one here, shot from above the clouds from this observatory, is the final nail in the coffin. Look at how the sun just shrinks and the light shrinks to nothing. That cannot happen, as I showed you in the when the sun illuminates the entire Earth, which it does from 93 million miles away. It has to. You don't get this isolated look at the sunlight trailing the sun. That's only possible with a small sun, close, not very high, illuminating locally. I mean, if this isn't proof to you, then you gotta take the blinders off. Okay, and finally I want to show you some examples of local illumination, or a city in the background. This is from Grand Canyon National Park. You can see Las Vegas is one of them. You can see the stars going down, so you know that's not the sun. That's the glow of Las Vegas, it says. You can see that's local illumination. I'm just making an example showing you here's Tuba City and a little bit of Flagstaff. Now, in this one here, you see two lights. Obviously, we don't have two suns, but these are two cities lit up, and it's just to show it looks just like the sun going over the horizon. That's the point of me showing that. That's local illumination at work. The sun is not 93 million miles away, because if it was, the entire horizon would fade evenly, and the entire horizon would fade at the same time. Not what we see here, which is the small sun cruising over the Earth and the light is following it. Case closed.
The earth is flat, living in illusion. The earth is flat. We take some illusion. The earth is flat, living in illusion. So people don't know what to do. The earth is flat, living in illusion. The earth is flat, staging illusion. The earth is flat, living in illusion.
Hey guys, Enter the Stars. So I was thinking back to some fond memories when my children were small, and we always used to look forward to the fall, because that was the time where we could get out the warm clothes, dress up, and make our first trip to the pumpkin patch, where the kids would run around in the straw. And I always remember commenting to my ex-wife how the light had changed, and that could she notice it. that things fell just a little bit differently on the trees and the plants and our reality. And it all seemed to happen on one day. Now, it's easy for us to talk ourselves out of that and say, well, maybe it happened gradually and I just didn't quite notice it. But thinking back throughout the years, I don't think it was in my head, and I'm going to show you why. Now, this is the UN map. We're going to get into the Book of Enoch today, and how Enoch describes a flat path of the sun. He describes gates rising up and shifting like a gear shift. Not a gradual, but shifts, actual shifts. And that could explain the change in light that happens in the fall. Now, it probably happens in other seasons, but we just don't notice it. Of course, this is the flat earth model, but the model that I believe is a creation that is based off of God's creation is the lens-shaped earth, like a contact lens. So imagine fitting this map over a convex contact lens sitting on a table, and we living on the surface of it, not under it. See, the devil tries his hardest to be like the Most High. That is his goal. He will counterfeit every single thing that God does. So what better way to throw everybody off than say we live under a dome instead of on the surface of it? Because under a dome would lock you into this small world, and you would feel as though God doesn't care because he locked us in a petri dish. Where in fact we live on the surface of the dome, and we can, the heavens are before us. Infinite heavens. God is reflecting back at us. But we'll get into all that. But first, I want to address this. Extrapolating this image out, we are looking at the owl. Now, don't run away, because Satan wants to be like the Most High. He wants to establish his kingdom on this earth. So what he does is he takes the miracle of God, and I'm going to show you from the Book of Enoch how the sun actually follows this owl path, and I believe it's in a figure 8. But see, the devil wants to mimic God, have you not believe in him, and worship him here on earth, and he uses the signs and symbols to do that, to control your mind and confuse you. But there are way too many synchronicities within the Bible for all of this to be evil. And I believe in my heart it is not. And I woke up this morning feeling like I did when I was 4 years old. And I knew I had a toy waiting for me when I would awaken. I literally feel like I've been transformed after learning this knowledge. And I hope that you feel it too. So the Book of Enoch, and we'll get into that, travels in this path. It says that it rises up through the north to reach the east gate. Now we got to think about reflections here and how this works, and we're going to pull this apart today, and I'm not sure what we're going to find, but we're going to dig. But first, why would Satan choose this image, Moloch? Extrapolate all this out. Think about where these curves go. And that's why we've been led on this journey. Now, Satan didn't create the stars and the movement of the stars. So we have to ask ourselves, why would he choose the owl knowing that someone could figure this out? Because life is a giant process. And thanks to the subscriber I was brainstorming this with yesterday. As we go up toward the heavens, everything gets less dense. It's like a giant arrow pointing toward God. We start in space, the vacuum, down to the upper atmosphere where there's little oxygen, a little less dense. Then we get to the air, more dense. Oceans, more dense. Earth, more dense. Rocks, more dense. And finally, molten rock. Hell. which is the most dense. That is what Satan is trying to recreate on this earth. Do not sacrifice your children to Molech in the fire. Satan has his own little hell here on earth, and he requires sacrifice. But fortunately for us, our Creator does not require that. Let's get into this, you guys. Now, here we are at the equator. This is Kenya, Africa. And the first thing we noticed in a couple videos ago is that the sun is moving at the exact same speed as the stars behind it. Now that should be impossible, because the distance from our Earth to the sun is like holding your hand in front of your face. Your face is Earth, your hand is the sun, and then the next nearest star being literally New York City, from wherever you're at, unless you live in New York and pick a further distance. 260,000 times further away, and we are right here. The sun is right up against us, and we are told the stars are way further away. So how is it that the sun never gains ground on the stars, and that it's always on this sheet of stars, following the stars? Well, the amazing thing is Enoch tells us that the sun is attached to the stars. Now, how would he know this is the question. He knew it because he was shown, and he tells us that he was shown by the angels. He says, I saw the winds which turned the sky, which caused the orb of the sun and of all the stars to set. It's all on one wind. And over the earth I saw the winds which support the clouds. That's a second wind. He describes all this in the book of Enoch. That's exactly what we see in the night sky. Cannot be denied. I'm showing you right here. So then I got into more about the sun and its path. And I must admit, I got a little confused, because it says that the sun comes up through the north to get to the east. But then it sets in the west, comes up through the north to get into the east. It sounds like it's going in two different directions and doesn't fit really any models. Doesn't fit a globe model, doesn't fit a flat earth model, and it really doesn't fit the dome-shaped model, the lens model that we've been looking into. So let's get into that, because I think we figured it out. So the secret is revealed by following the stars, right? Because we just showed you how the sun is attached to the stars on that wind. So we follow the path of the sun. Now this is the northern hemisphere. This is the southern pole star, the southern hemisphere. This is the equator. North, south, east, and west is in front of us somewhere, but we don't see it. So Enoch says, the sun sets in heaven, and returning by the north to proceed towards the east is conducted so as to enter by that gate and illuminate the face of heaven. So included within the path of the sun is heaven. Now let's try to wrap our brains around this. And this verse 8 is key. That is what we're going to pull apart. The sun sets in heaven, and returning by the north to proceed toward the east is conducted as to enter by that gate and illuminate the face of heaven. And now we are going to get into some ultimate and profound truth. Here we are inside your eye. This is the back of the lens. The yellow dots are the equator. And as we've outlined, when you're standing on the equator, you see the stars going straight out from you at the equator. And when you look to the northern hemisphere, which is right here, they start to spin clockwise. Now remember, the sun is on this wind. Follow me on this. When you look to the northern hemisphere, the stars are spinning the other direction. And I want you to look, if you're standing on this equator and you're looking down, the stars are spinning in the other direction. And look at the reverse rings. Can you now see the truth? And all this is a reflection on the backdrop of this large disco globe, the internal mirror. This is how God does it, and it's amazing, because he's right back here behind this retina. He's the pineal gland. He is the ultimate, the Alpha and the Omega. Now, think about the sun being on one of these tracks. We'll use this ring. Rises up through the north. To rise in the east. Do you see how this works? It's reflections, and rises up through the north to return to the east. Rises up through the north to heaven to return to the east. And as it projects down onto this lens, it creates a perfect ring. And so Jesus asked his followers, and now I ask you today, do you have eyes to see and ears to hear? The eye and the ear are the two witnesses of God's creation. A flat ring, a projection, rises up through the north to return to the east. And this is simply fascinating. This is another first truth bestowed by the Holy Spirit. Simply amazing. And here are the words of Enoch regarding the sun. The sun sets in heaven, and returning by the north to proceed towards the east. Sets in heaven, here's heaven, returns by the north to proceed to the east. And even though it's doing this motion, it reflects down onto this surface, our earth. We're on the outside of this contact lens. And this is what we see, and we're seeing it right now in real time. Because the sun, remember, is affixed to the stars, and this is the star pattern we see in the sky. And Enoch continues on. It talks about that the sun is instructed to do so that it can illuminate the face of heaven. And that's exactly what we see in this model. In the same manner goes forth in the first month by a great gate. It goes forth through the fourth of those 6 gates, which are at the rising of the sun. And in the fourth gate through which the sun with the moon proceeds in the first part of it. There are 12 open windows from which issues out a flame when they are opened at their proper periods. And these are our solar flares. And I can almost bet you that if you or one of these channels that tracks the solar flares, BP Earthwatch, if you were to look at where these flares are coming out of on the surface of the sun, you would probably notice that they only come out of 12 holes. Because this is what Enoch has said, because he was shown the secrets of heaven. Then the sun rises in heaven. It goes forth through these fourth gate 30 days. So it goes through each of these gates for a period of time. And the gates that it goes through are the 6 gates. The 6 gates of the UN model. And again, because of the reflective effect of the retina in the back of the eye, the globe internal mirror. Even though the sun is following the star paths in that figure eight pattern, it reflects down on Earth as a ring, and it follows each of these gates. There are 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they're showing us their dominion over the secret knowledge here. This is Rome. That is the 6th gate. How do the seasons work? Well, when the sun is on this gate, it never quite gets to the North Pole, so the North Pole stays cold. But in their summer, they see the sun all day long and all night. It never sets as it rotates around them. During their summer, we are experiencing our spring. Do you see how this works? When it goes in through the next gates, this is our summer because it is over the top. The sun is in this next ring over the top of the northern hemisphere. But when it is on this internal ring going right over the Arctic Circle, the people in Antarctica don't see the sun. It stays dark for months at a time because the sun is so far away. Remember, this is all mirrors and gates. And the same thing applies as the sun progresses on each track. And that's why you sense a shift in the light. Because God is controlling the sun coming in and out of these gates. And that is the truth. And the sun goes on proceeding through its gates as Enoch outlines here, lengthening and shortening the days. How does that work? Well, we go back to our map, and the days get shorter as we don't see as much of the sun. Let's give you an extreme example. It's summer in the southern hemisphere. The sun is in this track directly overhead, warming this portion of the sky. And the sun is in its full glory as it's going through this ring just away from the outer edge. Well, the people in the northern hemisphere are not going to see the sun as brilliantly and as brightly. And in fact, standing on the lens, that sun is not going to be in the sky for as long as it is for these people as it rises and sets because of the angle of the rays of the sun. And that's about as simply as I can put it. And that is how we get our seasons. And ultimately, this is what we see when projected down. But as I just demonstrated to you, it follows the sheet of stars. Just think of it as a reflective effect and know that what Enoch says is true, that the sun passes through the glory of heaven each and every day. And God has the ultimate power over these heavenly bodies. And so you see the earth is neither flat nor round. And what way for the enemy to confuse and confound, knowing that the prophecy of the last days would come true, that knowledge would increase. What better way for him to confuse and confound than to create the black and the white, to create the flat and the globe, all the while the truth right in the middle on a contact lens surface. Both happen. The sun goes up and down from heaven to earth, as well as side to side from our point of view. Simply unbelievable. Anyway, you guys, take care and be safe. and be blessed. All the glory and credit goes to the Creator.
If you did like this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. If you haven't subscribed, hit the red subscribe button. Also click on the little bell icon to get notifications of my Flat Earth videos, which I upload every day.
Astronauts aren't trained how to swallow their saliva